The day my son sold my house. He smiled. He shook the buyer's hand, accepted congratulations, and acted like he had won. Everyone believed I was a confused old man who didn't understand what was happening. Even my own daughter looked at me with pity, but I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I didn't call the police. I simply looked at the contract and noticed one tiny detail, one missing signature. That single mistake was about to destroy everything my son had planned. He thought he had taken my home. He had no idea. The house was never really his to sell. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted most, stay with me until the end, because what happened next changed our family forever. My name is Robert. I'm 68 years old, and I spent nearly 40 years building the house my wife and I dreamed about. Every brick reminded me of a memory. Every room carried a story. When my wife Emily passed away 5 years ago, that house became the only place where I still felt close to her. My son, Daniel, started visiting more often after the funeral. At first, I thought he cared. He brought groceries. He fixed small things around the house. He told everyone he wanted to help his old father. I believed him. Looking back, that was my biggest mistake. One evening, Daniel sat across from me at dinner. "Dad," he said gently, "this house is too much for you. You should think about moving somewhere smaller." I smiled. "I'm not ready." He nodded politely, but I noticed something strange. For just a second, his smile disappeared, and in its place, I saw disappointment. I ignored it. I wish I hadn't. The next morning, Daniel arrived carrying a neat leather folder. He looked unusually cheerful. "Dad," he said, placing the folder on my kitchen table. "I stopped by because we need to take care of a little paperwork." I raised an eyebrow. "Paperwork?" He smiled. "Nothing important. Just some documents that will make things easier if you ever get sick." His voice sounded calm, almost rehearsed. I slowly reached for my glasses. Daniel immediately leaned forward. "You don't have to read every page. It's standard legal stuff." That sentence stopped me. Your own child should never be in a hurry when asking you to sign something. I opened the first page anyway. Most of it was written in complicated legal language. Property, estate, authorization, transfer rights. The words blurred together. Daniel tapped the table impatiently. "Dad, the lawyer already explained everything. Just sign where the yellow stickers are." I looked up. "Which lawyer?" His smile froze for a split second. "Oh, my lawyer. My lawyer." I had never met this lawyer. I quietly closed the folder. "I'll think about it." For the first time that morning, Daniel's friendly expression disappeared. "You don't trust me?" "It isn't about trust," I replied calmly. "It's about understanding what I'm signing." He sighed dramatically, stood up, and grabbed the folder. "Fine. I was only trying to help." As he walked toward the door, I noticed something. He wasn't disappointed. He was angry. That afternoon, I drove to the cemetery. Every month, I visited Emily's grave. Talking to her always cleared my mind. I sat beside the flowers and whispered, "I don't know what's happening anymore." A cold breeze moved through the trees. For some reason, I couldn't stop thinking about those papers. Emily used to say, "If someone pressures you to sign quickly, don't sign." She had spent 30 years working as a legal secretary. She trusted almost everyone, but never paperwork. Driving home, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I would visit our old family lawyer. The following morning, I walked into Mr. Harrison's office. He was 81 now. His hair was almost completely white, but his memory sharper than ever. "Robert," he smiled. "I haven't seen you in years." I handed him Daniel's folder. "Can you tell me what this really is?" He adjusted his glasses and began reading. The room became strangely quiet. 1 page, 2 pages, 3 pages. Then he stopped. His face changed completely. "Who gave you these?" "My son." He slowly removed his glasses. "Robert, these are not medical documents." My stomach tightened. "What are they?" He looked me straight in the eye. "They give someone else the power to sell your house." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. He told me they were for emergencies. Mr. Harrison shook his head. No, if you had signed these, he could legally complete the sale without you. The room felt colder than before. I stared at the papers in disbelief. Daniel hadn't been trying to protect me, he had been trying to replace me. I drove home in complete silence. Questions filled my mind. Why? He had a good job, a nice family. Why would he want my house? When I pulled into my driveway, a black SUV was parked across the street. Two strangers were taking pictures of my home. One of them pointed toward the front porch. The other nodded while writing something on a clipboard. I stepped out of my truck. Can I help you? Both men looked surprised. Oh, one of them smiled awkwardly. We're just evaluating the property. What property? He looked confused. This address was listed as sold pending final approval. My heart skipped a beat. Sold? Pending approval? Someone had already started the process, and I had never signed a single document. I stood frozen in my driveway. The man holding the clipboard looked confused. I'm sorry, he said. We were told the property was under contract. Who told you that? He hesitated. Our real estate office. And who hired your office? He looked down at his notes. I'm afraid I can't share the client's information. Before I could ask another question, his phone rang. He answered, listened for a few seconds, then quickly ended the call. I'm sorry, sir. We've been asked to leave. Within seconds, both men climbed into the black SUV and drove away. I watched them disappear around the corner. Someone was trying very hard to make sure I didn't ask any more questions. That evening my phone rang. It was Daniel. Dad, how are you feeling? His voice sounded unusually cheerful. I'm fine. Good. I was thinking, why don't you come over for dinner tomorrow? It had been months since he invited me. Any special occasion? He laughed. No, we just miss you. I agreed, but something didn't feel right. The next evening, I arrived at Daniel's house. My granddaughter Emma ran to hug me. Grandpa. She squeezed me tightly. For a moment, everything felt normal. Then I noticed Daniel watching us, not smiling, watching. Almost as if he was waiting for something. Dinner was unusually quiet. His wife, Laura, barely looked at me. Daniel kept checking his phone every few minutes. Finally, he cleared his throat. Dad, I found another lawyer. I slowly put down my fork. What for? He can explain those papers better. I already had them explained. His smile disappeared. You did? Yes. Silence filled the room. Laura suddenly looked nervous. Daniel forced another smile. So, what did he say? I looked directly into his eyes. He said they would allow someone else to sell my house. For several seconds, nobody spoke. Daniel finally laughed. That's ridiculous. Your lawyer must be old. Those papers were completely harmless. I didn't answer. Instead, I watched his face carefully. People often reveal more through their expressions than their words, and Daniel looked worried, very worried. After dinner, Emma pulled me aside. Grandpa, she whispered so quietly I could barely hear her. Daddy has been showing your house to strangers. My heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? I heard Mommy asking why people kept visiting your house. She looked around to make sure no one was listening. Daddy told her everything would be okay after you signed the papers. I knelt beside her. Emma, thank you. She smiled innocently. I wasn't supposed to tell. No, you did the right thing. As I drove home, one thought kept repeating in my head. Daniel wasn't planning something. He had already started. The next morning, I called Mr. Harrison again. I need another favor. Anything. I want to know if my house has been listed for sale. I'll make some calls. 2 hours later, my phone rang. His voice sounded unusually serious. Robert, I found it. My stomach tightened. What did you find? Your house is listed in a private real estate network. Private, yes. It's not visible to the public. Only agents and investors can see it. I gripped the phone tighter. Who listed it? There was a long pause. Someone using a power of attorney, but I never signed one. I know, which means. He stopped speaking. What? Someone may have submitted forged paperwork. The room suddenly felt colder. Forgery. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It could be a crime. That afternoon, I searched through every drawer in my study. Old tax records, insurance papers, property deeds. Then, inside the original purchase folder, I found something I hadn't looked at in years: a sealed envelope. Emily's handwriting covered the front. Only open if something feels terribly wrong. My hands began to shake, slowly. I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter, and attached to it, a legal document bearing one sentence that would change everything. The signature they could never fake for nearly 5 minutes. I simply stared at the envelope. Emily's handwriting looked exactly as I remembered: neat, elegant, careful. She had written only one sentence on the front: "If someone ever tries to take our home, trust this letter, not your emotions." A chill ran down my spine. Slowly, I unfolded the letter. "My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, something has gone terribly wrong. You always believed family would never betray you. I hope I was wrong for preparing this. But if I wasn't, please remember one thing. When we bought this house, I insisted on adding one special clause to the ownership papers. You laughed and said I worried too much. Maybe I did. But sometimes love means preparing for the worst. That clause can protect everything we built together. Don't let anyone pressure you. And don't sign anything until Harrison sees it. I love you. Always. Emily." My eyes filled with tears. Even after 5 years, she was still protecting me. Attached behind the letter was a certified legal document. I quickly drove to Mr. Harrison's office. The moment he saw the paper, he stood up. "Robert, where did you find this?" It was hidden with Emily's letter. He carefully examined every page. Then, he smiled for the first time in days. "This changes everything." "What do you mean?" He pointed to a paragraph near the bottom. "When you and Emily purchased this home, you added a protective signature clause." "I don't understand." "It means," he paused, "the property cannot legally be transferred unless your original signature appears on the final deed." I frowned, "But they have documents with my signature." Mr. Harrison slowly shook his head. "No, they may have copies. They may even have forged paperwork. But the final transfer requires a live, verified signature. And according to the land registry, it was never provided." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "So, the sale isn't complete?" He smiled again. "Not even close." Relief washed over me. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe again. But Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. "Robert, if Daniel truly submitted forged documents, he won't stop. He has already gone too far. We need evidence." "What kind of evidence?" He leaned forward. "Don't confront him. Let him believe you know nothing. And if he contacts you again, agree to meet. Sometimes, the truth reveals itself when people think they've already won." 2 days later, Daniel called. His voice sounded happier than ever. "Dad, I've got great news." "Oh, the buyer wants to meet you." I pretended to be surprised. "Why would they need me?" "Just final signature." There it was. The signature, the one they still didn't have. I remained silent for a few seconds. Then I said, "All right, I'll come." Daniel laughed. "I knew you'd do the right thing." After ending the call, I looked at Mr. Harrison. He quietly closed his notebook. "They've taken the bait." The meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. A large conference room, a real estate agent, a buyer, a notary, and my own son. Everyone greeted me politely. Daniel looked completely confident. The contract was placed in front of me. He slid a pen across the table. "Just sign here, Dad." I picked up the pen, looked at the final page, then slowly looked around the room. "I have just one question." The room fell silent. I turned to the buyer. "Before I sign, I'd like to know, Who told you my house was actually for sale? Daniel's confident smile began to disappear. The one signature he could never get. The conference room became completely silent. Daniel stood silently on the front porch. For the first time in his life, he wasn't asking for money. He wasn't asking for the house. He was asking for forgiveness. I looked into his eyes. The arrogance was gone. Only regret remained. I opened the front door. "Come in." He took one slow step inside, then stopped. "Dad, I don't deserve this." I nodded. "You're right, you don't, but your mother always believed. People should be judged by what they become, not only by their worst mistake." Tears rolled down his face. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. The silence said everything words never could. Months later, Daniel found a steady job. He paid back every debt he could. He visited every Sunday, not because he wanted something, but because he finally understood the value of family. One evening, we stood together on the porch where Emily and I had spent countless sunsets. Daniel smiled softly. "I almost lost the most valuable thing I ever had." I looked at him. "The house?" He shook his head. "No, my father." At that moment, I knew something. Houses can be rebuilt, money can be earned again. But trust takes years to restore. As I locked the front door that night, I looked at Emily's photograph on the wall. I smiled. "You were right. One signature protected the house, but love protected the family." Sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't a house. It's the wisdom to never betray the people who built it. The N5 the buyer looked at me, then at Daniel. "I'm sorry," the buyer said. "Your son told us you had already agreed to sell." I nodded slowly. "And when exactly did I agree?" The buyer hesitated. Daniel quickly interrupted. "Dad, let's not do this now." I ignored him. "No, I'd like to know." The buyer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "Your son said you were retiring and moving into assisted living." I felt my heart sink. That wasn't just a lie. It was a story carefully designed to make my disappearance seem normal. I turned toward Daniel. "You told strangers I couldn't live on my own anymore." He looked embarrassed. "I was only trying to make the process easier." "Easier for whom?" He didn't answer. The notary cleared his throat. "Mr. Robert, before we continue, I must verify your identity and confirm that you wish to transfer ownership." I smiled politely. "I'm afraid I cannot do that." Daniel's face immediately changed. "What?" I said. "I cannot transfer ownership." The real estate agent looked confused. "Is there a problem with the contract?" "Oh yes, a very big one." I slowly reached into my briefcase. Mr. Harrison had told me to bring only one document, the original ownership agreement. I placed it on the table. The notary adjusted his glasses. Within seconds, his expression changed. He looked back at Daniel. "Did you know about this clause?" Daniel frowned. "What clause?" The notary pointed to the bottom of the page. "This property contains a protective signature clause. The transfer cannot be completed without Mr. Roberts' verified original authorization." Daniel's face turned pale. "But I already submitted the paperwork." The notary looked directly at him. "Those papers are not sufficient. In fact," he paused, "if someone submitted them claiming Mr. Robert had already approved the sale, that may constitute document fraud." The room became deadly quiet. Daniel suddenly stood up. "Dad, I can explain." I calmly folded my hands. "I'm listening." He looked around the room. "I was under pressure. My business failed. I owed people money. I didn't know what else to do." The buyer stared at him in disbelief. "You told us the family had agreed." Daniel lowered his head. I thought Dad would sign once everything was ready." "You never asked me. I was going to, when? After you sold my house?" He couldn't answer. Just then, the conference room door opened. Mr. Harrison walked inside. Behind him, two investigators from the county property office entered the room. One of them placed another folder on the table. "We've completed our preliminary review." The investigator looked at Daniel. The power of attorney submitted with this transaction. He opened the file. Contains multiple inconsistencies. The signature appears to have been copied from an old insurance document. The room fell completely silent. The investigator continued. We are officially suspending this property transfer pending a fraud investigation. The buyer immediately stood up. We're withdrawing from the purchase. The real estate agent quietly gathered his papers. Within moments, the deal Daniel had spent months arranging collapsed. Daniel looked at me with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Dad. I never wanted it to go this far. I believed he was sorry, but not because he had betrayed me. He was sorry because he had been caught. There is a difference. Several weeks later, the investigation confirmed what Mr. Harrison had suspected. The documents had been altered. The sale was declared completely invalid. My home remained legally mine. Daniel avoided criminal charges after cooperating fully with investigators and making full admissions, but the financial and legal consequences were severe. He also had to rebuild the trust he had broken, something no court could restore for him. Months passed before he came back to my house. This time, he didn't carry contracts. He didn't carry a briefcase. He carried only an old photo album. I'm not asking for the house, he said quietly. I'm asking for another chance. I looked at the family photos. There was Emily, smiling on the front porch. I remembered something she used to say. A home isn't protected by walls. It's protected by the choices people make inside it. I invited Daniel in, not because I had forgotten, not because I excused what he had done, but because forgiveness is not the same as trust. Trust must be earned again, one honest choice at a time. I kept my home. He got a chance to rebuild his character. And in the end, the signature that saved my house was never the one on a contract. It was the promise my wife and I had made to protect our family and each other, no matter what.